The Apostle Paul unveiled, solving a 2,000-year-old mystery. For 2,000 years, a mystery has lingered in the pages of Scripture, hidden in plain sight. A single phrase, works of the law, has been misunderstood, mistranslated, and misapplied. It shaped the very foundations of Christian theology. It led millions to believe that Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, had rejected the Torah, replacing it with a faith that required nothing but belief. But what if history got it wrong? What if Paul never opposed the Torah at all? What if the key to unlocking this mystery has been buried, not in the ruins of an ancient temple, but in the very words of Paul himself? Paul's letters contain the most controversial words in Christian history. A person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. Galatians 2:16. We hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law. Romans 3:28. For centuries, these verses have been used to argue that Paul was rejecting the Torah. But was he really? Or was he speaking about something very different? Something that had nothing to do with abandoning God's commandments? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the ancient texts found in the caves of Qumran, one document stood out: Miksat Ma'aseh HaTorah, some works of the law. And what did it reveal? That in Paul's time, works of the law wasn't a reference to obeying God's commandments. It was a technical term for conversion, specifically the Jewish customs required for a Gentile to be accepted as part of Israel. Suddenly, Paul's words in Galatians and Romans take on a whole new meaning. Paul wasn't rejecting the Torah. He was rejecting the idea that Gentiles had to convert to Judaism through circumcision and ritual laws to be part of God's covenant family. And he makes it even clearer. You who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. Ephesians 2:13. But brought near to what? Paul answers, remember that you were at that time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise. Ephesians 2:12. Paul's message is revolutionary. Through faith in Messiah, Gentiles are welcomed into the covenant, not as converts to Judaism, but as fellow heirs with Israel. For 2,000 years, a misunderstanding created a chasm between faith and obedience. Some have pointed to James, arguing that he contradicts Paul. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. James 2:24. But James isn't speaking about circumcision or ritual laws. He's talking about acts of righteousness, feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, and showing love. James and Paul were never at odds. They were fighting different battles. Paul opposed legal barriers that excluded Gentiles. James opposed empty faith that lacked action, and now the mystery is solved. Paul never argued for a faith without obedience. He never dismissed God's commandments. He never abolished the Torah. He fought for the unity of God's people, for a faith that welcomed rather than excluded. For 2 millennia, this truth has been buried beneath layers of tradition. But now the evidence is clear. What will you do with it? Welcome to Truth Beyond Tradition,